You know, it's interesting that along with this wave of festivals that developed in the wake of Woodstock, there, the notion developed quite quickly that when you were going to do a special event, why not film it? Why not make a documentary film out of it?
I just remember about a week before it was going to happen, and I learned that the organizers hadn't organized the film yet. So I approached them, and I guess, I don't know whether they thought about it before, but it's obvious, that a 3-day festival like that should be filmed. So I had lengthy negotiations with them, and we got a crew in about 5 days, and everything was there. Yeah, it's amazing.
Why Film Festival Express? I think a big part of it, although of course Ken Walker could tell you more, or for that matter, Willem Pullman, but I think a big part of Filming Festival Express has to be, this was a unique idea. It wasn't just a festival, it was a traveling festival. Originally it was going to be 5 cities, it became truncated to 3, Montreal and Vancouver, got X'd out. But you have this idea of this caravan moving from Toronto to Winnipeg to Calgary. It happens to be on a train, a private train, and what's going to happen on that train, and what might that train produce in terms of interesting social, cultural, musicological situations?
Here we had a chance of the musicians really having a party with each other. I mean, normally musicians leave after the show, the bus is already waiting and they go. In this case, they were staying, enjoying, watching their other musicians playing, and then going together on a train for 3 days. It was like a really good chance to get into the inside of the musician, to get beyond the commercial image that is always being created for them, to get their personalities. And I think that the film with Janis Joplin and some of the others really shows that.
I remember seeing the cameras, but I don't remember knowing what was going to happen with that footage or whether we expected there to be a film. I think, the newspaper reports in the following days, and as the tour continued, there was still coverage of it. The word was out that the protests had, fucked the promoters, and that despite the music and despite the pleasure that the people who were attending were having with the music, it was going to be a financial disaster. So I think we assumed that, the film was going to go down with that.
Well, I think this is why the film is actually held up, because the organizers of the festival lost a fortune, and they were really embarrassed about us showing all this fighting with police, keeping people out, and it was a ridiculous show, of course. And apart from that, they were trying to get a bigger share of the show now. Suddenly, because they lost all this money, they thought, well, we maybe have something really big, so they want to try to get a bigger share. Anyway, I don't want to talk about controversy. That's a long time, but that's why it took 30 years to get this film made.
What happened was, in about 75 or 76, the actual Festival Express project kind of collapsed on itself as a result of multiple lawsuits being tossed back and forth. And the film kind of went into a limbo.
I never heard about the footage again until about 1994, when a friend of mine, Garth Douglas, called and said that somebody he knew named Nick had called to say that he'd met this lawyer in Rosedale who had said he might be interested in looking at some film canisters in his garage.
And we went to this guy's garage and we found about 150 big old film cans. We took it back to our office. We rented a flatbed and discovered that what we had was a pile of work print, slash print, and mag stock. And my first question was, where's the neg? Where are the sound materials? This looks great. What is it?
And, you're looking at dusty old, cans of work print that say, Janis Joplin, Full Tilt Boogie Band, Traffic, Grateful Dead, The Band, Mountain. You're just like, it's like at this point I'm, in my late 30s, and I still love the music. And at that point, I'm working professionally, making documentaries about music, among other things. And suddenly there's this treasure trove. Turns out, Garth calculates there's 30 hours of this stuff, which is work print. Very little of it is in sync. So the treasure hunt began. I had some preliminary meetings then with Garth and with Ken Walker, concert promoter, and with Willem Pullman, who was the producer of the original film shoot.
James and I made a deal with Willem, and I got on the phone and spent 5.5 months searching for this stuff, talking to people all over North America, old labs, defunct labs, old sound guys, and finally dug this stuff up in the National Archives of Canada in the Crawley Vault. Had about 1/10 of the stuff cataloged. It had an archivist in there for about 8 years. And the son of Budge Crawley's old production manager, Bill O'Farrell Jr. was an archivist, and he went in and dug out stuff for 3 or 4 months. We kept getting boxes of stuff, boxes of nag, boxes of print, boxes of sound materials, and we finally got what we felt was the entire film.
Yeah, I got a phone call from a mate of mine up in Toronto, and he owns a studio up there called Metalworks. His name's Gil, and he was the drummer in a band called Triumph. I used to produce them. Anyway, he called me up and says, listen, I found this bloke. He's got loads of film on. It's all up your alley. It's vintage stuff. You know, do you want to come up and do a quick mix? I said, yeah, all right. And so he says, I'll send you a ticket. And I flew up to Toronto, met Garth Douglas, who had apparently done all this investigative work and found all this film. And we transferred, it must have been 30 or 40 hours worth of audio tape to multi-track, from 8-track to 24. And I mixed 3 sections. One was the band, one was the Grateful Dead, and the other was a Janis track. And we put a little demo together. And I thought, well, it'd be nice to do this movie. It's some wonderful music.
When I saw the footage, it was like, you know, it's like such a jigsaw puzzle, and I was quite intrigued to try and see the thing through to fruition. And I got a call from Garth Douglas, and he'd been talking to Eddie Kramer, who was involved in the project and mixing the tracks and that. And I'd done the Hendrix thing, and Garth said, look, you know, will you be interested in getting involved? So I said, yeah, it sounds fantastic.
When I listened to the tapes for the first time, I thought, I know what's going to go on with this, because this is 1970, it's 8-track, it's primitive conditions, and it's very similar to the stuff I was doing with Jimi Hendrix, which is the same period, same kind of problems, you know, syncing and non-syncing and all that nonsense. And some of the tapes are okay, some of them are not. Generally, the quality is not up to modern-day standards, so I knew I was in for a bit of a haul.
Creatively, it's almost like, you know, a lot of the work's been done for me. You know, a lot of it's been really well shot. Peter Bijou shot the stuff, as well as other cameramen from England and from Toronto, and probably from the States. And, you know, Frank Satonovich, who I knew anyway, was, you know, the original director, and I met Frank a couple of times when I was like a young guy, you know, trying to make films, and he had a good sort of spirit about him. And I thought, oh, Frank was involved, Peter Bijou was involved. It's good that I've been, you know, one of the people who've been passed this ball and been allowed to sort of run with it, and hopefully get it across the finish line and get it done, you know.
James and I worked on getting the project off the ground for about 5 years. Well, 4 or 5 years. From the winter of '93, starting really in '94, until '98 or '99. I'm not sure when.
I pretty quickly came to the decision that it was, you know, just no way I had the time or resources to try and put this thing together, because it was not so much the filmmaking part of it, but there seemed to be no chain of title. There seemed to be no continuity of, you know, who signed what release for what.
We got to the point literally where we understood that the whole process was hampered by rights. And the only way we were going to get a film made is to get the rights done.
I think the difficulties were mostly the obtaining the rights from the producer, from the musicians, and I think until it was financed, we couldn't really get that, because musicians wouldn't let us use their name to do the financing. We had to have the financing first.
I just figured, you know, I'm a storyteller. I want to tell stories. I don't want to hang out with lawyers. So I bailed on it. Some point thereafter, Gavin Poolman came into the picture for me, and because I think he and Garth had been working together, because I left the project.
And Gavin, of course, is Willem's son, and it seemed like a logical move to say, here, you know, God bless you, good luck. I love to see this done, and but I can't spend more. I've spent 5 years on it. That's enough for me.
And then within like a month, Garth said, look, you know, this other guy's involved, Gavin Poolman. And I met Gavin, and, you know, he seemed enthusiastic about it and told me more of the history of the thing.
Well, I was involved originally as a little kid when my dad went off to produce the film, and it sort of fell apart somehow. I was a kid, so I didn't really know how. And one day he came home with film cans to put in the garage, tons and tons of film cans. And of course, we moved a lot for various reasons, and we always had to carry these film cans everywhere. And I was going, come on, Dad, why do we have to carry these cans around? Can't we just, like, leave them behind? And ultimately, the cans of film that were in my garage turned into the film we're making now.
He kept the original guys on. He kept Kramer and you, and it was fun.
Bob went to Dublin and worked with the editor who's working on the film now, Eamon Power, and they cut together a showreel, which I almost cried when I saw it. I didn't know it could possibly be this good. And so we took the showreel around with my producing partner, John Trapman, and showed it to basically some wealthy individuals who decided that this was a risk worth taking. So we financed the film completely on the basis of this showreel being shown to wealthy people.
You can get an investor who's interested in rock music and he has the money, he'll get all very excited. Like, I think I myself very excited the film is being made.
The great thing about this project is the archive, you know, tells the story. You know, that's where the narrative is, rather than have to go out and interview loads of people and have long-winded talking heads, probably like this, like what I'm doing now. You know, so much of the story comes from the footage. You know exactly what's happening. You know, it's there in the pictures and the sound. It's fantastic.
But it was very important for the film to tell its own story rather than us to be discussing, you know, the differences in the way that music has evolved or some sociological or anthropological view, which we felt would alienate an audience. We're making a film that will hopefully show people the love that the musicians had at the time for the music that we as audiences had at the time and still feel.
You know, when I look back on that era, 67 through 72, I've always thought of that as the golden age of rock and roll. And here are these disparate characters from the music biz. And it wasn't really even the music biz then. These were wonderful musicians on a train going from one place to another. It's like, you know, Jimi Hendrix said, you know, his new band was going to be the Band of Gypsies. This was really like a band of gypsies, all sort of gathered together in one place at one time and moving through time to another city and creating music at the same time. It's kind of bizarre, but it's wonderful.
Also, because you're looking at people before they became icons. They were just, you know, guys from Albuquerque and a girl from Texas and a bunch of folks from the Gaspé. They were just folks. And to see them in that light, to see them as people, rather than North American icons, really gives it a nice flavor. And I think that's what makes the Festival Express different. That's what'll make it different from all the other rock films out there, and there are a lot.
As someone who was there as a 16-year-old and someone now as a 48-year-old who still loves the music and admires those musicians and the filmmakers that are involved, it almost seems in an odd way that the wait's been worth it, because people are really going to appreciate it now. And, you know, handled right, and I think it will be. It's going to be an extraordinary document that will put people in touch with a very rare moment in music, and a rare moment socially and culturally that for 90 minutes people will be able to relive on the screens.
The film was, I think, originally conceived in about June of 1970. It's now December 2002. Hopefully it will be finished in the summer of 2003. So we may make the Guinness Book of World Records, 33-year film production. I don't think anyone else has ever done that.